Okay, so Tzniut. Typically, the definition, the translation of Tzniut is modesty. Right. So, what's modesty in general?
It's how
the word modesty
you behave, how you dress. I know I generally put off with people that say I did this and I did that and me.
Okay. So not being focused on oneself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're presenting yourself. You're not putting yourself on the spot so much.
Very good. Okay. Yeah. So the word modest, comes from Latin, and it's the same root as moderate. It's that everything's okay. Everything's like nothing's standing out, right? Not standing out. Everything's just everything's alright. Modesty and humility are two concepts that kind of seem to be very related. Humility, or anava, is making the humility. The English word comes from making oneself insignificant. We're going to discuss a couple of situations that come from the Torah which relate to Tzniut, and we'll see how it develops the concept. Like I said in the beginning, in the invitation to the Shir, we're not specifically talking about the way women dress. That's not modesty. Modesty is a much greater concept. Okay, so the first example, and I'm also going to bring many of the concepts that I'm talking about come from either Rabbi Leib Kellerman. You can find his shiur on simpletoremember.com. Unbelievable, mamish, amazing stuff. And Gila Mandelson, who is a very well-known speaker on women's issues. She has a book, Outside Inside, which talks about modesty. She has a book about magic touch, which talks about negia, touching between men and women. Very, very significant books. So Rav Kalman brings up the first story we're going to talk about, Kabbalah Torah, which is also mentioned in this week's Parsha, although I didn't say the Parsha in the invitation, but it is mentioned in this week's Parsha, Kabbalah Torah. What happened? So the Jewish people gather around Har Sinai. Hashem makes a fire and lightning and kolot of shofar on the mountain, and the Jewish people hear that, and Moshe Rabbeinu goes up, and Hashem says, I am the Lord your God. And the entire Jewish people dies, according to the oral tradition, and then Hashem tells the Malachim, the angels, to go and resurrect the Jewish people. Okay, we're here, let's try again. Hashem says, you will have no other gods before me. The entire Jewish people dies. Hashem says, okay, go wake them up again. They wake up and they say, whoa, that's too much for us. It's too powerful for us. We can't take it. Moshe Rabbeinu, maybe you can get the information and pass it along to us. Okay? Then what happens? The Jewish people, then Moshe Rabbeinu goes up, they finish, right? Then Moshe Rabbeinu goes up on the Har Sinai, and he receives the rest of the Torah. In the meantime, the Jewish people are down at the bottom of the mountain, and they have the golden calf. And they see that Moshe Rabbeinu hasn't come back. They have a golden calf that they create, and this is going to be their intermediary between them and God. Hashem sees this, tells Moshe Rabbeinu to go down, and Moshe Rabbeinu comes down. What happens then is just unbelievable. Moshe Rabbeinu sees what happens. First of all, he breaks the tablets. He then goes into the midst of the Jewish people, takes the golden calf, and grinds that up into a powder, puts it into water, has everybody drink. Whoever was intimately involved in this avodah zarah immediately dies. Then he goes and says, "Whoever's with me, with God, come to me." The Levi, Shevet Levi, comes to Moshe Rabbeinu. They take out their swords, slaughter 3,000 of the Jewish people. Then Hashem says to the Jewish people, it says to Moshe, "Stand back, I'm going to destroy them all." Then Moshe Rabbeinu davens to Hashem, please don't do that. We're going to do tshuva, everything's going to be okay. Hashem accepts their tshuva, and so. Then Hashem says, okay, now, we're going to do this again, but we're going to do this a different way. Moshe Rabbeinu, you take tablets, bring them up to the mountain. Don't talk about it to anyone. This is going to be quiet, okay? I'm going to tell you the Torah, I'm going to tell you the Ten Commandments, you're going to bring the Ten Commandments back down. Chazal say, Ein lecha yafeh min hatzniut. There is nothing more beautiful than modesty, than tzniut. Okay? That's the first example. The first story. The second story, Chazal say, that it says okay, it says Vahiva Boker Vinehi Leah. Okay, it says in the story, it's talking about Yaakov Avinu with Rachel and Leah. Yaakov Avinu works for Lavan for 7 years in order to receive Rachel. Lavan at the wedding, on the wedding night, switches Rachel and Leah, so that because he wants Leah to be the one who's married first. And it says in the morning it's Leah. What does that mean? The Gemara says that Ad Hashta Lav Leahi. It means that Yaakov Avinu didn't realize until the morning that it was Leah. That's kind of an unbelievable situation, because what happens on the wedding night? The man and the woman are together. How is it possible that the Torah is telling us that he didn't know it was Leah until the morning? That says, okay, so it says that that Rachel and Yaakov had an agreement. The day before, they said, we know that Lavan is really crazy, and he has all kinds of different ways of messing up things that are supposed to happen. So Rachel and Yaakov had signs that they were going to give each other on the wedding night, so that they would know that it's the two of them. Okay? Rachel sees that Lavan switched the sisters, that it's Leah underneath the chuppah, and it's Leah who's going to be going into the wedding room with Yaakov Avinu. Rachel gives the signs to Leah, to his sister. Then, I don't see it directly here, but this is an example that Chazal say that Rachel was Tzniut. What in the world is the relationship between the idea of Tzniut and Rachel giving the signs to Leah? What's the idea of Tzniut and HaKadosh Baruch Hu giving us the 10 Commandments a second time quietly? Okay. So this definitely indicates to us that Tzniut is something much greater than what people typically talk about on a day-to-day basis. Tzniut, in terms of Rachel, I saw this quoted from Rav Lior Engelman from Machal Meir, that a person can keep a secret. That is the tzniut of Rachel. Rachel knew that Leah was the one who was going into the wedding room with Yaakov Avinu, and she kept the secret. That's why she was tznuah. What's the greater definition? The greater definition is to recognize the power, strength, or beauty within you, and to protect it until the appropriate time. That's what tzniut is. Tzniut is really that a person realizes that they have so much strength, so much power, so much beauty within them, and it's not appropriate to share it at all times. There are specific times that it's appropriate to share, and that's when I want to share it, because that's when the power comes to make the proper connection that I want to make. Why is tzniut commonly used in terms of male-female relationships? Because the power that a person has to make the connection, like we were talking about last week with the ahava. The ahava is the ability to connect, to give to someone, right? And we want to give in the most appropriate way, the proper way to give to the other person. The power that I have within me to make that connection, that is a power that if I let it out at other times, I can make connections with other people, but those aren't there may be other connections I need to make, but those are not the primary connection I need to make, and I need to be more discerning about the way I make connections in order for it to be the proper connection. That's what tzniut is all about. In terms of Rachel, she saw that for her to go and not and allow and break the process that was going on, for her to go in and break up the connection between Leah and Yaakov, what would happen? Leah would be destroyed. She wouldn't be able to handle it, because she is Einaim Rakot. She has very soft eyes. She's a very delicate person. We could go into the personality of Leah. But she saw that Leah would not be able to handle it. And therefore Rachel knew that this is the time that she needed to keep the secret that Leah was the one who was going to do with Yaakov, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would have to deal with it in his way, but Rachel was not going to be the one to destroy her sister. And it's a beautiful midrash that talks about that situation. And in terms of the giving of the Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you listen to the shir, the Rabbi Kellerman discusses this whole thing. It's an hour-long shir. It's mamish, it'll blow your mind. It's amazing. It's unsimple to remember about relationships. That's an advertisement. He doesn't pay me. So if you go in, you'll see that the Torah has tremendous power. If we look at the Torah as a way to connect to, as a way to access secrets of the world, okay, in a way that we can change the world the way we want it, that's la'avet. It's to make the Torah crooked, to make our relationship with Hashem crooked. The power that we saw at Har Sinai is that power. The Torah is a power to change the world. But if we see it as just that power, and not a power to change the world in a way that we can connect to God, then we've completely missed the boat, and it's dangerous for us. The Torah tells us, like the Chazal tell us, that the Torah is a sam chaim and a sam mavet. If you use it correctly, it's a sam chaim. It's like an elixir of good. If we use it improperly, it's an elixir of bad, an elixir of death. So that's why Hashem said, okay, let's do this again, but we'll do it quietly, so that you can focus primarily on the relationship with Hashem. After that, you'll be exposed more to the power of the Torah, and you'll be able to use that in a way to connect to Hashem. I know I wasn't going to talk about women's dress, but in terms of the way we present ourselves to people, if we want to present ourselves in a way that preserves the power and strength and that ability to connect on a very deep level, if we want to preserve that for ourselves, that means that we need to cover it. We need to cover it a little bit. A lot of times I think about presenting this topic, and I think about what would happen if we all walked around and we had our salary written on our forehead. If I walked into a room and it said 50,000 shekels a month, people would probably relate to me differently than if it said 5,000 shekels a month and 100,000 shekels in debt. Right? It's not that I need to cover myself up because I'm ashamed of something. I am who I am. Right? But at the same time, in order for people to be able to focus on me and for me to be able to focus on myself properly, that requires a certain presentation of who I am. And it's a presentation that's not false. It's a presentation that's correct. It's true. But it's at a certain level of intimacy. Because hopefully, if I can identify a proper way, a proper person, a proper relationship that I want to connect with in a more intimate way, then I'll be able to open up and I'll be able to show that strength and that power and get to the level of deep, intense connection. So we see from the stories from Chazal that the idea of Tzniut isn't just about the way, in relationships between men and women. It's about the way I present myself, the way I think about myself, that I need to connect to who I am truly. I need to recognize that. I wanted to connect to anava. Tzniut is recognizing the power within me and protecting it for the appropriate times. Anava is saying the power within me is not mine. The power within me comes from Hashem. And they're very different things. Tzniut is, I have power within me. Anava is, I have no power within me because it's not mine, it's Hashem's. We can talk about it again at another time. But we need to recognize the power that's within us and recognize that power can lead us to amazing places, but it has to be channeled properly. B'ezrat Hashem, by channeling it properly, we'll be able to reach those connections that we need to reach in order to really achieve the goals that we want to achieve.